All right, welcome everyone. Welcome. Give me one second here. All right. Okay. Happy Thursday. Hope everyone's doing well. Got some great things to share today, as always. So, um, let's see where to begin. I'm going to talk a little bit about something that's been really, really amazing and powerful and life changing in my life. And it's something that I'm going to be teaching in my masterclass tomorrow, Primordial Alchemy. And that is the primordial qigong form. It's a magical form I've been doing since 2016. I haven't really talked about it much because, obviously my main focus here is sexual cultivation on this channel. But of course, manifestation is a large part of that as well. And it just feels like it's time for me to share this practice of primordial qigong and all the aspects of manifesting that go along with it, clearing the blocks that you have to living the life that you want, seeing what's between where you are now and where you want to be in your life. That's a huge part of this process, right? So primordial qigong is a really incredible form that was the legend. It's an old form. Supposedly, it was developed and transmitted by Jiang who was the original creator of Tai Chi Chuan, the internal energy based martial art. But he created this form as a spiritual and energetic cultivation form. Legend has it that Zhang Sanfeng became a Taoist immortal, but this form has been passed along and was transmitted to me by Michael Wynn. I've learned it from some other people as well, different variations of it. And so when I started practicing this form in 2016, my life dramatically changed. The first time I did this primordial qigong form, it takes about 12 minutes to do. You move in a circle, a counterclockwise circle, which kind of metaphorically, it's like you're stepping backwards in time, turning back the clock, going back to source is the idea of this practice. Hence the primordial aspect of it, the Wu Ji, the source. You gather the energy of all the directions. You gather the heavenly, higher dimensional energies. It really activates the higher centers of the body, and you collect this in your lower dantian, which is your cauldron space. It's the space that you digest and assimilate qi. The first time I finished this form, I laid on the ground and I had this incredible feeling in my heart, this blissful, expanded feeling. And I was like, okay, there's something really amazing to this form. And I started doing it every single day. And I've been using this form primarily as bringing myself into alignment because, again, it's a very powerful, spiritually activating, but also aligning and centering form. And so that's basically what I've been using it for is for spiritual development, keeping myself aligned with the universal energies, and especially for manifestation, because you at the beginning and at the end of this form and throughout the form, you have a certain intention, something you want to bring into your life, let go of whatever. And you keep plugging that into this form as you're doing it. And this becomes an amplifier for that intention. It broadcasts it out. You're connecting with the chi field, you're connecting with higher energies. It's very different from just, being like, okay, from my mundane problem solving mind, I would sure like $1 million. That's not going to be a very powerful intention. When you create a ritual around this, you really know how to create that vibration in your body that you've already received, that what you're trying to create, and then you put that into this form. Absolute magic happens. And I know last week I was telling a story of me literally pulling out $500 from underneath my pillow one day because I needed more money to go to this retreat to study Chine Song. I want to share a couple other stories of me working with this form. One was when I met my current partner Mariah. We met through Bumble, right, a dating app, right. The first person I had ever met through a dating app. I wasn't expecting much, and I met Mariah, and we really vibed. We really kind of hit it off. And into this form, I had this deep attraction to her, but it wasn't in the space of neediness because I was really stepping into this space of centering in my life. But I put it into this form, like my intention being basically, I really feel like I could create a harmonious relationship with this person, and I would really like to make that happen. So that was kind of my intention. I put that into this primordial qigong form, and we've been together ever since, right? in a very amazing relationship. One other story I want to share. This was very recently. I'm still using this form. I did this form yesterday, and I'll be doing it later today as well. But this was about a month and a half ago. I had a very kind of activating experience. It's difficult to describe exactly what happened, but basically, I've been doing a lot of kind of higher energy center work with the pineal gland and these kinds of things. And later in the day, I all of a sudden found myself in this very, very altered state. Like I would compare it to how I felt when I've taken psychedelic substances many years ago, right? This very, it was a very intense and actually quite unpleasant experience for me at the time because it was like, the multi-dimensional kind of experience where there's all these weird energies coming at me, all these weird fears, and it was very, very ungrounding, very uncentering. And I was like, okay, this is intense. This is weird. I'm not sure why this is happening, but I need to get this thing under control. So I went outside my yard and I was trying to do qigong. I was trying to do like, Zhandrong grounding practice. It seemed like it was just making it worse. It was intensifying this upward kind of kundalini type energy that was just, really rattling my system. I tried to do my Tai Chi form, same thing. It was just intensifying. I was like, oh shit, what do I do? And then I just had this thought like, oh, I should do the primordial qigong form. Just like that's the thought that came to me, like, this is what I should do. And so I started doing this primordial qigong form. And within a couple minutes, I felt the energy kind of balancing out. I was kind of coming down from this intense bad trip experience. And I felt this powerful universal, just describing it, this universal energy just like flooding through my body. And I had just absolute deep insights, very deep releasing of things that I had been holding within me. I felt this pattern emerging from me, that this pattern of mistrust I saw within myself. It's like I have trouble trusting, we could say, God, the life force, universe. It's like I feel like I have to control everything myself, and that I've been unable to like surrender to this trust in something greater. I just had this like insight of that, and it was this incredibly opening experience. And I finished the form and just stood there, in Wuchi posture, and I felt absolutely phenomenal. I laid in the grass afterwards in my yard, just like looking at the trees, watching the clouds go over. And so this form had helped me take this really intense kind of rush of just pure, very Kundalini-esque energy and balance it, kind of ground it, harmonize it, digest it, and I turned into this state of pure bliss. And it's like my inner child came out. I was feeling absolutely phenomenal. I was just absolutely at bliss, and had this deep sense of centering and presence in my life, for weeks and weeks after that. So that was a recent experience that happened, me using this qigong form. So again, I'm going to be teaching this form, this primordial qigong, tomorrow's masterclass, Primordial Alchemy. There's a link in the description of this video. There's a link on Instagram to join. That's happening live tomorrow. If you can't make it live, there'll be a recording, so don't worry. But again, this is going to be very, very life changing. The practice itself is going to be life changing for you, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of information about and ways to go about manifestation, how I personally completely transformed my life, going from being just completely broke at a dead end, unhappy, crippling depression, anxiety, from being this person going nowhere with my life to having a six-figure business, doing something extremely purposeful, not working for anyone else, not being a slave, an employee, having an amazing relationship, an amazing partner, being able to travel the world. This is what I'm going to be sharing tomorrow, is basically, the principles I used, the practices I used to make massive change in my life. So if you're interested in, getting your life into alignment, getting into clarity, getting into balance, I highly recommend joining tomorrow. More information in my bio on Instagram, the link in the description of this video on YouTube. And when you practice specifically this qigong form, it's been passed down for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, who knows, because it is a very effective form. It really, this is the big thing I would say about this form, is that it becomes a regular tool for you to hold your center, right? Because we're in this time of dramatic change. The life force is changing very, very rapidly, and people are getting kind of thrown around in that's these cycles of change. You can think of them as like a spinning circle, right? When you're on the outside of that circle, because you're highly polarized, you're fighting these external forces. You're like, oh, I'm on this side, I'm fighting this side, I'm right, they're wrong. I'm stuck in my belief systems. I have to do things this way all the time. Then you're on the outside of that circle and you're constantly just getting thrown around. But when you can gain and develop a bit more, we could say neutrality, neutral force within yourself. This is one of the highest goals of internal alchemy practice in the Taoist lineage is cultivating this neutral force. We're not so polarized. You're like, oh, I must be this and I have to fight these guys. You become a bit more neutral in some ways. You become a bit more detached. Like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to be on this side or that side. Maybe I can be my whole different independent system and just kind of and so you're stepping into the center of the circle. And so instead of just getting your ass kicked, getting thrown around by these changes in life, you're able just to kind of sit in your hammock, sipping lemonade, just like, oh, isn't the world crazy? That's funny. But I'm here having my own cosmic party completely in my own center. And this form helps you do that because you're gathering these universal forces from all the directions, from heaven and earth every single day. You're digesting and cooking that in your cauldron, we could say, in the lower dantian. And so you develop this very, very strong sense of center, spiritual center, emotional center, physical center, this grounding. And that is the most important thing I think anyone can have on the planet right now, because this is the whole problem is people are losing their center. They're losing their ground and they're buying into these external stories, buying into this external fear, anger, whatever. And they're just getting driven to, I have to fight this person, I have to fight this thing. And people are just getting their asses kicked. So you can step out of that and choose to be in your whole own unique world that you live in because you're at the center within yourself. And that's what this forum has personally helped me do. So again, that's my Primordial Alchemy class tomorrow. It's going to be amazing. Check out the link in the description of this video on YouTube. Check out the link in my bio on Instagram. And with that, I'm going to answer some questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Always good to see you guys. Oh, something else I want to share, and I think this goes right in with what I've been talking about. Big change coming in my life. I've decided I'm going to basically get rid of pretty much everything I own and spend the next few months just traveling. Brian and I are going to be driving around the country, road tripping, checking out a lot of different places we've been wanting to go, some places we've been before. So I'm going to spend at least the next 3 months just traveling. And I'm super excited about it. It's like, I've been knowing that I need a huge change in my life the past few months, and it just hasn't been exactly clear like what that's going to be. And just became very obvious. Like I looking back in my life where I'm like, when was I the most happiest? When was I the most just feeling in my center? And in 2019, I did exactly what I'm going to do now. I spent almost the entire year just traveling. Ryan and I together, we had, all the things we owned were in a car with us and we were just traveling. And I've never felt so free, so light, and so, deep in my practice as well. So I'm doing that again, super excited about that. So I'm going to be going around the country and maybe other countries as well. Who knows? So I'm very excited about that. Kind of going back to the path of the wandering sage, where I'm going to be studying with different teachers and of course teaching some events as well. I'll be keeping you guys posted as I'll be putting some live events together this year. So really excited about this. And it's a great year. Okay. I'm gonna answer some questions now. Herbage Meerkat, thank you. Hazim says 55.5K subs. Yeah. Just hit 55.5 thousand subscribers on YouTube. So in my travels, probably going to be staying at Airbnbs, renting places, maybe some camping as well. Want to hit up the national parks and things like that. But I've been having this strong desire just to really become disconnected from technology, kind of the matrix that humanity is getting pulled into. And that's been my main goal recently, is just okay, get away from this weird control system rolling out and become just completely sovereign, spend more time in nature. Just, again, we all have the potential to create our own reality. We just get so hypnotized by screens and things like that we forget this, right? All this money being spent, all this energy being spent to keep people so distracted that they forget that they are incredibly powerful. Okay. Hazim says, have you ever experienced God and what are your thoughts? I certainly have, every moment of my life. This is the thing, is like we often think of creator source as being this like person up here. He's got to be like it, or they, he, she, whatever. Like, oh, they're up there on the cloud. That's God. He's way up there. I'm down here. But there's no separation. That's the whole thing. Is like if there is a separation, then that's not the ultimate source, right? Maybe that's a deity or something like that. that people are praying to, but it's something outside of them. That's not the true source. That's not true creator, because we are all part of this, the Tao, the energy field of consciousness, and we are all an aspect of that. So when you step into a practice of doing meditation, practicing energy cultivation, you see that you are a fractal, a certain portion of this field, and that this consciousness is, you are a seed of this consciousness. So it's you and the source are the same thing. You're just a little more polarized, a little more having this experience of being separate from it, right? Richard Garcia says, how do you differentiate between manifestation, alignment, and intuition? Well, I mean, these are just words, right? Manifestation for me is just being able to create something, being able to create. And we all are doing this. We're all manifesting. We're all creating things. We create everything in your life right now, you created. But a lot of people are doing this rather unconsciously, and they're doing it from a place of, often a place of negativity and fear. And, like when you're, for example, when you let fear drive your decisions, you're like, uh-oh, I'm scared, so I got to do this to protect me. I better take this thing. I got to get a bunch of guns to protect myself. I got to stock up on food and money and all these things. And then you have all these things and you're afraid to lose them. And so you're acting out of fear. It just leads to more and more fear. So manifesting out of, clarity, which I guess these things all go together in that alignment, being aligned with your true self, being aligned with source, being aligned with your higher spiritual self. You were able to manifest much more efficiently from that state of alignment, right? And that's what, again, I'm getting into tomorrow in the class. Intuition is simply your subconscious mind, or your super conscious mind, which it really is, right? When you get deeper into this deeper perception, because we all have the ability to be deeply intuitive. We were as children. We could just, I remember being a kid, I could tell everything about a person. I could just feel being, and I still have this ability, right? But I closed it down to some degree as I got older. But anyways, these are all kind of, separate things, but they definitely all work together. Okay, B says, what could I do to build more yin energy? I have lots of fire and yang energy, but I feel like I'm lacking the yin. Well, practice yin. uh, More calmness, less activity. For me, the most yin supportive thing is to just like go out in nature and just sit and just listen to the sounds. I've been practicing walking meditation a lot recently. It's been really, really amazing for me. So just stillness, right? A lack of activity is yin. Also, being around the water, you can take yin supplementing herbs and things like that. But I think qigong's great for that as well. But I've been doing this walking meditation practice where basically uh, I'll be like, as I started doing this, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to walk from here to this tree. Maybe it's 100 yards away. And for this whole duration of walk, my goal is to have no thoughts, simply to be in complete awareness, like observation mode. And what really helps me do this is simply listening to the sounds of the birds, listening to all the noises happening, because when you're listening, you can't really be thinking, you're more receptive. So, and I'll watch my mind be like, oh, I started thinking something before I made it to this section I was going to walk to. So I start over. And as I do this more and more and more, you get in. I mean, this is really just meditation, but I like to do it while I'm walking. So you just get in this deep state of tranquility, focus on releasing tension from the body. It's quite amazing. Okay, I have to answer this question because I just saw it and it's got my attention. Liar Liar One says, could chi be the feeling of blood moving in the veins? Yes and no. These are two completely different things, and it's very obvious because if you do physical exercise, especially like intense or cardio exercise, you feel very obviously what it feels like to have blood rushing through your veins. It's a very specific feeling. And then when you do qigong and you practice it to a high level, you feel very specifically what qi feels like. It's a very different quality. It feels quite electrical. It feels this thick, viscous, hydraulic, radioactive buzzing sensation. It's very, very different. So no, it's not. And maybe in the beginning, some of that, because yeah, qigong does improve the circulation of blood, but blood and qi are not the same. Otherwise, if this Chi was just there's a lot of these kind of modern people who just have trouble grasping the concept of chi because they can't measure it with the scientific instruments because our science is limited. And so they say, oh, well, it's actually probably just like the fascia tissue stretching out and the fluids moving, and it's the blood. That's what they were talking about. These all these quaint Chinese guys, oh, chi. So there's a lot of that now. I understand because our modern scientific minds, but chi is chi. It feels very, very obvious. It's not a physical thing, especially when you get the Dantian going, the Dantian activation. It feels crazy. That's definitely not. There's nothing physical there doing that. The heat, the bubbling, the very they call it the cauldron because that's exactly what it feels like. It starts to boil, and it's quite different from blood. But often when you're beginning qigong, you're not feeling the qi, so it's understandable to say, oh, it's just the blood moving. But as the practice evolves, it becomes very, kind of mind blowing just how powerful the sensations of qi become. Derek Trevino says, "Will this ever maybe be added in the future to the multi-orgasmic man course? Likely not, because it's a different thing. It definitely supports your sexual cultivation to do the primordial qigong and these practices, but it's something different. I'll probably keep them separate." Mustafa M says, "How many meals to eat a day for good health, please?" Well, it's not so much how many meals you're eating as to what you're eating, and obviously like your caloric intake, things like that. Um, so if you exercise a lot, if you're physically fit, if you're moving your body, which is important to do, then you'll probably need to eat more food to support that process and to build the muscles and the blood vessels and everything. But if you aren't a super active person, then you'll want to eat less, basically, right? But again, it's what you're eating. Healthy organic foods, not a bunch of refined garbage and table salt and refined sugars and things like that. Derek Trevino says, plan to come to Texas. Think you'll enjoy Austin. I was actually just in Austin in March. Was it March? I think it was March. Yeah. It's a cool place. I spent a few days there the first time. Powell, what's up, brother? Greetings from Poland. Okay, what is a 15 to 40-minute exercise set I would recommend for sexual transmutation? Zhanzhuang and orgasmic breathing. Simple. I've been talking about this a bit recently in that Zhanzhuang, when you get deep enough with it, it becomes a sexual transmutation practice in itself because you start to, uh, especially as you go a bit lower in your stance, so the knees are right over the toes, never further than the tips of the toes, though. It creates this heat, and if you can stand there for 30 minutes doing that, it starts to cook the lower cauldron, the dantian, and cook that sexual energy through your body. There's other practices you can add in there to enhance that, but that'll do it when you get deep enough. But your orgasmic breathing is sexual transmutation. It's moving the energy through your body. So that's the main thing to focus on, basically. And you can do it in that posture of Zhanzhuang. Powell says, what have you done to quit having urges to watch porn? I practice sexual kung fu. And for me, it wasn't like, the urges really went away, at least not for a while. I actually made a video. I'm making a video about this, but basically it's like, for me, it was when I started doing sexual kung fu and feeling what it felt like to have my sexual, approaching sexual pleasure as building the energy, moving through the body, and ending a session without ejaculating, having this deep bodily awareness and feeling what that was happening with that in my body, and then like watching porn and being like, oh, it just like pulls all the energy up into my head. It gives me a headache. Like I just feel overly aroused. I can't control the energy. It just makes me want to ejaculate. There's like, oh, there's actually nothing beneficial about this. And if I would ejaculate, looking at porn, I just felt like shit for at least a day. The images were just like glued in my head and just I was like, "Oh, this is actually terrible. Like, I'm not gonna do this anymore." So it was pretty easy for me to just stop doing it. And yeah, it was like, "Oh, it'd be nice to look at porn images just because it's like the monkey mind looping old habits." But, I would have that thought or that urge and be like, "Yeah, okay, I have the urge to do that, but it's not going to lead anywhere good, so I'm not going to do that." So basically, you have to become stronger than your urges and see the bigger picture and realize, yeah, well, okay, I have this desire to shoot a bunch of heroin, but if I do that, it's probably not going to be good in the long run for me. So, you have to develop self-discipline. It's simple as that. And doing the practices on top of that, so you're naturally putting that energy into other places rather than suppressing it, right? Keeping the energy flowing. It just becomes a natural step to let go of the things that are not serving you. And the big thing is being able to take that urge, take that raw sexual desire, and redirect that into something a bit more useful, right? That's the whole thing. Is there's nothing inherently wrong with having the sexual urge to do something, right? To look at a sexual image or to have sex, right? There's nothing wrong with that urge. It's just when it drives you to do that, or you feel like you have to suppress it, that's when you run into problems. So the key is to be able to move. You feel that raw desire and you move it through your body. Do the microcosmic orbit, and go do something creative with that energy instead. And you'll be surprised at what happens when you get in that habit of it. Lambert Martin says, how the lower Dantian is connected to the microcosmic orbit. A good question. So lower Dantian is it's the primary energy center of the body, especially, we're talking about qigong here. Different from the chakra system. A lot of people are like, oh, the Dantian is the second chakra. It's not that. It definitely relates to the lower three chakras, but it's completely different. It's something very different. Basically, the Dantian, you have to develop it, right? It's not the average person doesn't have a Dantian. There's nothing there, just empty space. You have to develop it. Dantian means elixir field, and so you do all these stillness practices. It requires stillness and concentration, relaxed concentration, to eventually build this electromagnetic field in the belly, which becomes a container that you then start filling with yang qi, and that becomes, we could say, the fuel for your practice. Because the thing with the microcosmic orbit is that you can work with it from the beginning and you'll have great results, because your orbit's always running. So just by working with the orbit, you can enhance and balance the flow of chi through it. But it's not tangible for, most people who are starting with it, because there's just not the level of juice to make it feel tangible, right? You have to create some chi pressure. It's that chi pressure comes from building the Dantian, building, every practice session, you're putting a drop or two of this yang qi in the Dantian. So it takes years to really develop it. It's just, there's no shortcuts here, right? And then when you have that chi pressure in the Dantian, it overflows through the orbit, and you feel this, thick current of energy running through your microcosmic orbit. It's a very obvious, almost physiological experience, right? And so that's kind of the connection, is that we could say the Dantian's the battery and the microcosmic orbit's the circuit. If you don't have any charge in your battery, the circuit is just not going to run as efficiently, right? So that's why Dantian work is so important, to really go deep in internal energy cultivation. Liar 1 says, why did you stop having cold showers? I haven't really stopped, but I did take a break from cold water in the winter. It interferes a bit with, speaking of Dantian work, and with just overall chi engagement. Like, I stopped doing cold showers in the morning because I would take a cold shower. I love doing them. I feel great, but then I go to do my qigong and I have a bit harder time getting the chi going, because the cold kind of causes this contraction. So my priority is getting that amazing feeling of chi moving through the body. But in the spring, the summer, even through the fall, I'll do ice baths and things like that. So yeah, just kind of a practicality, really. But I do ice my balls every day. That's a great testosterone booster. Cypher Sam says, what do you think about DMT and mushrooms? I've had experiences similar to them without taking them also. I think that, the drugs, the psychedelics specifically, they help people kind of, they're okay. They could be, I've talked about this a lot, but I know people are interested in this. Basically, they can be very helpful, but they can also hold you back. They can be a huge kind of anchor, like holding you back as well. I'll talk a little bit about this. First of all, they're helpful because for me, uh, in 2008, I took some magic mushrooms and just blew open, my higher energy centers. Like, went from being just a very worldly, like, I was in a band playing rock music. I was just like, yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was my life at the time, pretty much, right? I just wanted to get laid and like feel good. And then I had this basically Kundalini type experience, feel this energy rushing up my spine. That first experience I had with these, plant medicines, and it dramatically changed who I was. Like, Like all my friends saw us like, what happened to you? You know, you're a completely different person. And I got interested in like yoga, meditation. I was, 19 years old. I'm like, I don't know what it is. I just feel like I know I need to like learn yoga and meditation and these things, And so it really changed my life. But then we'll talk about how they can kind of hold you back. Because I had this belief like, okay, so I need these things to like, connect the spiritual realms. I need them for spiritual growth. And I eventually realized they were holding me back. I kept having these just terrible, unpleasant trips that like, messed me up for months at a time. And it just where I started to realize that eventually you have to let go of these things. It's like they can be good, like kind of open the door to show you what's there, but you can only get so far with them because the thing is that you are interacting with another entity. Really, these plant medicines are they're entities, they're beings, right? And what you're doing is you're seeing their consciousness. You're experiencing their consciousness, right? And yeah, they have a pretty expanded consciousness, but you'll only able to you're only able to get so far with them because you rely on this external thing. So you start to become their servant in a sort of way. They start to drive you, like these people who are doing ayahuasca every weekend and things like that. They need it. The plant is like kind of taking over them in some ways, right? And I'm not saying, it's like a crazy parasitic thing, but I see people get really stuck in this because they don't actually develop any sovereignty spiritually. They think they need this external thing. And when they don't have it, they feel stuck and depressed in life. So this is the whole reason I got into internal energy cultivation was because uh, it allowed me to achieve these same states over time without needing the substance, and it's a lot more stable. These substance, psychedelics, very very up and down experience. Like, oh, I'm at one with God, and then oh, I'm in hell, and then oh, I came back down. Hey, bro, you got any more? Um, and they deplete your jing. They burn your jing down. You see a lot of these guys who've been doing psychedelics for years, kind of the the party festival crowd, and they look really depleted. And this is not a judgment. Like I don't care, what anyone does. It's just I've noticed personally, they deplete the kidney energy, the gene energy. That's what's burning, fueling this trip you have is the gene. So it's a trade off. So basically, they're very helpful for people who are really stuck and have having trouble kind of seeing the bigger picture, the other side of things. But they can also be a trap as well. So move beyond them. You don't need drugs to get high. Your body, the chemicals are actually coming from your body and you can learn to stimulate that with practices. Mustafa says, when doing the deep breathing, does the exhale need to be more slow than the inhale? No, not necessarily. Uh, kind of uh, generally, they say that if your exhale, if you're trying to like calm yourself more, then make your exhale longer than your inhale. If you're trying to stimulate yourself more, the inhale longer than the exhale. But usually, equal inhale and exhale, balance them out. Powell says, how does the three Dantians refer to the seven chakra system? Is it the same but with different interpretation? No, these are completely different things. Dantians are not chakras. Chakras are not Dantians. These are different things that often get kind of superimposed over each other. The Dantians are simply very, energy, kind of like energy transformation centers and storage units. The lower Dantian, some systems say that the lower Dantian is the only true Dantian of the body. Whether this is true, it's difficult to say. It's difficult scientifically really look into these things because we don't have the instruments to measure what's happening in the energy body, beyond a few spectrums of frequencies. But the Dantians are different. The chakras are kind of these nodal points, kind of filters, and they actually relate to different points along the microcosmic orbit. There's all these points that correspond to the chakra system. So there's a certain relation in that, but the Dantians are different than the chakras. Don't think of them as the same, I will say. Hey, Tina. Tina says, hello, with Qigong, what movements support and balance yin energy versus yang if there's an excess of either? Good question here. So the thing is that with Qigong movements, for example, clearing yang from the body is something that you will usually do with like purging practices, heat clearing practices. The six healing sounds is one of these. There's a lot. I'll show you guys a good one right now to clear heat from the heart. A lot of people have a lot of heat in their heart. I haven't done this one in a while. Let me think here. So you is it, man? Maybe I should have reviewed this one first. Let me think on this one. Okay, so you so you pull the fingers in towards the heart. That's what it is. Okay. As you inhale, you draw the fingers in, you form beak. All the fingers touch as you come in towards the heart, and you exhale, and you can use the heart sound. Spread the palms open and just be like you're pushing the energy out. Move your mind through the palms to the distance. Inhale, breathe into the heart, the whole like chest cavity here. Exhale. That's a practice that will purge heat from the heart system. A lot of people have a lot of heat in the pericardium, the heart, triple heater. We have a lot of heat in our bodies in the modern world, upper body, right? So it's not really as simple as like, okay, you move your hands up, it releases yin energy. Move your hands down, it releases yang energy. There's a lot of subtleties to the practice of qigong, but in general, I would say that more vigorous exercises tend to stimulate more yang energy, whereas more kind of gentle, relaxation, yin, obviously yin practices will support yin energy. Another little subtlety here is in, for example, like the standing practices and a lot of the internal martial arts and, qigong practices. When you're double weight even between left and right leg, like your standard Jan Zhuang practice, that's a bit more stabilizing. It will build a bit more of a yin energy and a balancing energy. When you're on single-legged postures, there's a lot of these single-legged Jianzhuang postures. They produce this powerful yang, very hot energy in the body. So there's a lot of subtleties to this. It's difficult to really say like, oh, this move is specifically. There's specific qigong forms for building yang energy, and there's specific qigong forms for clearing heat, building yin, and things like that. So yeah, I would say like excess yang is extremely common. Most people in the modern world have excess yang. Excess yin is pretty uncommon, but it can be. So basically, if someone's too yin, they need more. I would say actually like more physical exercise. Actually, certain qigong practices will be good for that as well, but something a little more vigorous, right? Whereas if someone has too much yang, they usually just need to chill out. So for them, actually just like laying in the grass under a tree and just not thinking of anything would probably be quite supportive. Powell says, how long and how often should I do microcosmic orbit meditation? Well, it depends what your goal is. It depends how much time you have. um, I would say a good kind of general for most people as just like a daily maintenance, um, 15, 20 minutes, solid, every day, every other day, whatever. Uh, that's kind of what I recommend just as a maintenance for microcosmic orbit. You can do it longer, you can do it more, you can do it every other day, but just in general, Anshuman Sharma says, hey, I love your videos. I believe I have hypertonic pelvic floor muscle. I'm not able to relax. Any suggestions? This is very, very common. Check out my video called, uh, I've got some YouTube videos on this. If you just look up sexual kung fu pelvic floor, specifically the pelvic floor rehab video, it will help you gain more insight into this. I did another one. I think it was called top 4 exercises for pelvic floor tension. That will help you release this. I'll just say right now, reverse Kegels, uh, deep squats, like you hold a deep squat and just breathe, stretches out the pelvic floors. Don't do any squeezing, don't do any Kegels. That'll make it worse. Um, those types of things. But check out those videos. I also did a whole masterclass on uh, a comprehensive, basically routine for deeply releasing pelvic floor exercise and more information about why this is so common. So you can check that out as well on my website. That was the Awakening the Sexual Center class. Sebastian says, is it true that we should watch out for who we get intimate with, meaning that we should be aware of their energetic patterns, traumas, and past partner energies before being transferred through sex? I mean, overall, yes, you should kind of feel someone out a bit before you just jump into bed with them. And it's up to you, obviously, how you choose to go about this. But again, I say this all the time that sex is a deep exchange of energy. So whatever patterns they have are going to be transferred to you, and vice versa. And at the same time, understand that you're probably not a perfect person. Do you have a perfect history? Have you always been just really really good? So understand that we're all human. Just it's just a question of like do you feel in harmony with that person? Do you have love and a deep resonance with that person? Because if you don't, you it may not be the best idea to get your energy intertwined. But whatever works, whatever makes you happy. Derek Trevino says, speaking of shrooms, lol. Just curious your thoughts on this. I tried shrooms 2 different times years back, and both times I had terrible trips. Why do I personally think people have great trips and some have terrible trips? Do you think it's a specific indication of anything? Well, that's the whole thing with these with psychedelics. It's a gamble. You don't know what's going to happen. It's not like they're like people like to take them because a lot of people have like giggly, funny woo, experiences, but you can have the most absolute hellish. Like I've spent an eternity in hell, like straight up on psychedelics, and it's not pleasant. I wouldn't wish this experience on my worst enemy. It's just it's fucked up. That's why one of the reasons I don't do them anymore is it's just I felt like I learned everything I had to learn from them, and they're just there came to a point where all of my trips were just terrifying in a lot of ways, like weird stuff about ancestors fleeing from spider aliens that were consuming weird shit. I'm like, okay, you know what, this is really weird. And again, um they also tend to like bring out deep stored patterns, which is I think one reason they're beneficial for people who do like the psychedelic assisted therapy and things like that. But it's often like 100 years or 1,000 years of growth in a few hours when you're taking these things. So sometimes it's going to be love and light, but sometimes it's going to be absolute complete hell. It's what they are. They're not like it's not like people often take these things like just trying to get high, like, oh, I'm just want to have a good time. Let's take some shrooms, go down to the club. Like these are you know they're poisons in a lot of way. It's a very shamanic experience, so it's not something just to be done for fun. That's for sure. So it's I don't know. Again, the set and setting, make sure you're in a good frame of mind, all that. But even with that, like there's no promise that you're going to have a good experience. It's what it is. And again, that's why I got into internal cultivation on deep levels, because I got the best aspects of what I liked about taking plant medicines without the bad side effects, the depletion, the gene burning up, all these things. So just learn to meditate. Obviously, it's not easy. We all want like the quick fix, but the quick results lead, are instant enlightenment means it lasts for a minute, right? And then it's gone. So that's kind of how it is. So if you really want to sustain something like this, you know, you have to practice a lifestyle around it. Psychosocial says, please answer my question. It didn't show up in the chat box. Sometimes the things you guys type don't show up in YouTube. Sometimes there's like certain trigger words that seem to take them down. So if I didn't answer your question, it's because I'm not seeing it on my feed. So I apologize for that. You could try typing it in again. Also, I will say that the chi field of the planet is so it's a bit chaotic that I imagine a lot of people are having bad trips right now. Like I sure wouldn't be taking psychedelics right now. John John Zena. I love it. John Zena. He's got the he's got the meme and everything. It says, if I am lonely, is that a bad place to be in to meet a girl? I mean, yes, overall, yes. Like if you're meeting someone, if it's kind of a space of desperation, like, oh, I'm just really lonely, I just really want to meet someone, then you're more likely to get yourself into a relationship with someone who's actually not a very good match for you, because you're in this kind of low state of neediness, right? There's an emptiness. Whenever there's relationship based on you feel empty and you're trying to fill yourself up with that other person, that fulfillment's only going to last so long, and you have, you have issues in the relationship. And that's kind of the norm, I think, for most people's relationships. And whatever, it's fine. But generally, I would say it's best to practice self love to get yourself into a state of abundance, filling yourself up with energy, and so you start to love yourself. It's like, what are you looking for in another person? Why can't you give that to yourself, right? And then you're not trying to take something from someone else. Your relationship instead becomes based on you have this overflowing of abundance and you're sharing it with someone else, right? So work on yourself first, I would say. Powell says, "Do you work with chakras? Will it help to transmute sexual energy?" I mean, yes, I would say overall I work with chakras and that I'm working with these, various energy centers of the body. Um, for example, the microcosmic orbit works with the chakras. Again, it correlates all these nodal points on the orbit. These acupuncture points correlate to the chakra points as well, right? So the microcosmic orbit is unifying all of them. Um, and I've personally found just the model of working with the energy meridians and the dantians a lot more efficient personally. I was into yoga and kind of the, chakras and things like that for years. And my extent of my practice was like, okay, visualizing the color of this chakra, this sound, things like that. And I don't know, I only got so far with that type of practice. For me, the kind of approach I use now has been a lot more efficient, but everyone has a different, constitution, a different way of engaging practice. So whatever works for you. Pure Present says, I learned that sauna kills sperm cells. Stop doing it and notice massive increase in sexual energy. Do you think sauna killing sperm cells is defeating the purpose of female retention? Well, a very simple fix here is to just bring an ice pack into the sauna with you. I like to do saunas because they're amazing, amazing detox. If you're ever feeling, weird, just kind of stuck, weird emotions, whatever, stagnance, go sit in an intense sauna for 30 minutes to an hour. Take some cold showers every now and then, and sweat it out. It's very amazing. But yeah, it makes your balls too hot and it can kill your sperm. But the quick fix: bring an ice pack, keep your balls cool. Your balls are getting the cold. That's helping them. Your body's sweating intensely. It's a win-win. All right. Santino Martial said, how long did it take you to get your daily habits into a consistent flow? This is a good question. And I would say along the lines of this started for me personally when I got into yoga back in 2011, 2012. And I was in a space where I needed it. I was having a severe kind of crisis in my life. I went through really, it was a very difficult, I went through a difficult breakup for me. I'd been with this person for several years and I was sleeping on the couch. He was banging the roommate that I had found out about this, you know. Um, so I had a lot of emotional pain from this, but also at the same time, it was manifesting as like physical pain. I was a full-time musician at the time and my shoulder hurt, so it made my difficult to play guitar. I was having all this pain, so it was just like a double whammy on me. And so I was like, okay, I heard this thing yoga is supposed to like heal your mind, your body, your soul. So I'm gonna try it. And so I started doing yoga. I just started following like videos online, and I would do it every other day when I started out. And I remember that felt like because I wasn't a super like physical person at this time in my life. Basically, all I did was sit around playing guitar, and I'd go for walks, things like that. But that was my ambition at the time. How I practice qigong and sexual kung fu now, that's how I used to practice guitar, like hours a day, just intensely, right? So I was pretty good at that, but the rest of my body was a little out of balance. So, anyways, um, it was that was my first discipline was doing yoga, and it felt like a lot for me at the time because I was really weak. I was like super underweight, just scrawny. I wasn't eating much. I was like, oh, food's toxic. I just sprouts and raw veggies, bro. I was one of those guys, and my body was just falling apart, right? So. Um, that was my first daily regimen, and it was just really I made a decision, like, I have to do this, and so I did what, like, 30 minutes an hour yoga every other day, then it became every day, um, And I also started actually meditating back in like 2009, 2008. So I've been practicing meditation for, 13, 14 years. So I guess that kind of was the first discipline. And I started doing that every day in 2010, like every day. I've been meditating every day since then. So that, I guess, was my first discipline. And when I got into qigong and sexual kung fu, it was just a decision like, okay, uh, I was solely into kundalini yoga, and I was just blasting off, a lot of heat up in my head. It was very, very up and down, like, oh, I'm in bliss, I'm enjoying it. Oh, I'm crash landing. And that's what got me into qigong. Was I was like, I need something a bit more stable and grounding because I'm kind of living in a delusional plane. And so I just made a decision, like, I'm going to do this every day. Like, I made a decision. It's like, I can't not do this, right? And so I was like, okay, when am I going to do it this time? I was actually doing in the evening then. I was like, okay, this time I'm going to do 15 minutes, this standing meditation practice, no matter what. And I did. And, I've been doing it every day since. And so it's really like you start doing something every day where you have to set the time. You just have to make the decision. It's really just discipline. It's like you just do it. Um, I know it's easy to fall back into instant gratification habits, but you just have to be strong enough just to make the decision and to stick to it. And so you start with something, anything, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day. And once that, after a few weeks, it becomes more of a habit. After a few months, it really becomes solidified. And you start adding to that. My what originated as a 15-hour practice for me turned into a 3 to 4 hour daily practice, right? Okay, a couple people on Instagram asking for book recommendations. Number one, I got it. Grab this. This is the kind of the foundational sexual kung fu manual, Tao Secrets of Love, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy, by Montauk Chia and Michael Wynn. It's a bit outdated, especially the practices. It's like squeeze the pelvic floor, squeeze, squeeze. I don't recommend doing that. But overall, the information's solid. It gives you kind of a viewpoint of the Taoist sexual cultivation. A really amazing book on Qigong I recommend is The Way of Energy by Lam Kam Chuen. Just look up The Way of Energy. You'll find it. It's got people in the cover and standing meditation postures. That's a really, really great one. I think those are solid starting points. Cypher Sam says, took DMT before, and as soon as I took the hit, I went into an infinite loop. It felt like hell. I shouted out, and I felt like I shouted into a void and no one could hear me. Other time, it was amazing. I've never actually done DMT, so, but I think I've had enough secondhand experiences of other people telling their stories that I'm good. I've not heard of Dean Radin. Powell says, what books of Tantra do you find the most valuable for you? Um, there's one called The Jewel and the Lotus. It's kind of a good, kind of decent overview. Of course, they're like, oh, these practices work the best if you do the cobra breath, but you have to pay an instructor $3,000 to directly transmit it to you. But really, the cobra breath is nothing that stellar. I will say that. Fortunately, I didn't have to pay someone $3,000 to learn it. There's another book called what is it? Sexual Secrets by Nick Douglas and Penny something. I forget her last name. It's just kind of an overview of like Tantra, Taoist sexology, just some of the like different historical aspects of it. It's interesting. There's a lot of interesting things in there. Not a whole lot of like practical stuff, but some interesting things. Um, there's another one. Oh, Diane Richardson has some really great books. She has a book called Tantric Orgasm for Women or Female Tantric Orgasm, something like that. And it's a book for women, but it's really, really insightful. Just her view of the value of orgasm and different experiences of sex, and not just relying on intense friction-based sex all the time. I thought that was a very interesting book. Okay, guys, any other questions? Feel free to type in any questions if you have them. But again, tomorrow is my live masterclass, Primordial Alchemy, I'm going to be teaching the Primordial Qigong form. Amazing, amazing form. I was talking more about my experience with this at the beginning of this. You're going to learn how to manifest and use this form to really bring yourself into alignment every day and to bring the things that truly serve you into your life. So find more information in the description of this video, Instagram bio, and it's live tomorrow, but you'll catch the recording if you can't make it live as well. Okay, guys, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. Take care, guys.